Hi, it's Ileana here. So I am going to do a hypothetical question about experiencers and researchers. I am going to use myself as an example. I have event memories of being an interplanetary corporate conglomerate asset on some of the ICC Mars bases. And I actually have mapped out Mars base coordinates through Google Mars. I also have memories of seeing mining facilities on the moon, laboratories of the secret space program, and Mars colonies. So I've basically mapped this out through Google Mars, the moon, and some of the military secret bases, underground bases on the Earth, where I was taken by the Monarch Solutions program as a teenager, and also the ET abductions with the genetic experiments. So my question to the researchers is, as an experiencer, how can you corroborate any of this information? You say you have coordinates of evidence of being on a Mars base. In my case, it's 11 Mars bases, and seeing weapons facilities as well, mining, Mars colonies. I have actual coordinates that I spent mapping out through Google Earth. And I've saved this and I've put it out in the public domain on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. But how do you go about corroborating this? You're all asking for evidence. Okay, you're an ICC asset and you say you were here. Where's your evidence? I spent half a year mapping the locations of the bases that I was on, that I remember being on, working on, doing communications, encryption, decryption in the ICC databases, language translation, that kind of stuff. So I have memories of that. And I have the recorded mapped locations. So what do I do with this? I can't exactly do a freedom of information request of NASA, the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, or even to the US government or any other government to get evidence of these locations on Mars, of the bases. And to anyone I reach out of the experiencers, like I've sent some of them the actual locations that I mapped out of ICC Mars bases, and none of them replied back to me, the ones that claimed they were on Mars. I said, do you remember these locations? Can you corroborate any of this? No responses at all. So how can I even verify that evidence as factual? I have the evidence that I've produced from my memory recall of events. I have it, but it's not exactly like I can ask for the Freedom of Information Act request of the military to confirm that these bases exist or not. So my question is, what do I do with this research? With the research I created from my memory recall? Who do I give it to examine and to verify these coordinates? So how do you corroborate any of this information? You guys are asking for evidence. Well, I have some evidence. I have coordinate locations. Just asking any of the researchers out there, if you want to research this evidence, I have it, and I've made it public. I'm an experiencer myself, but I'm also a researcher. I have an academic background, and I have actually, I worked in educational institutions, so the evidence is there. I have it. I've done my due diligence to basically write it all down to the last coordinate sets of what, where, and why. So I have it. I have the evidentiary evidence of where the exact base locations are on Mars. I even remember some of the corporations that are shareholders of the interplanetary corporate conglomerate, a memory list from those databases that I input those names in of those companies on those Mars bases. I've made that public myself as well. I've done my research on those companies, what they do on Earth and what contractors do out in space. I freely put that out, and I sent it to a researcher as well, and never heard back from the researcher about what I submitted. I answered some questions. So my question is, how do we bridge the gap between the experiencers and the researchers and actually take this information seriously? Who's willing to look into the claims of SSB experiencers to verify their claims? I mean, I've done it myself. I've done the research. I've gone on Google Earth, Google Mars. I've carefully looked at the coordinates at the geographical locations that I remember to make sure that it's all correct according to recall of memory events of where I was stationed as an asset. So I've done the work. I've put in the time. But where do I take this information now? I can't take it to the authorities. I can't take it to NASA. I can't take it to the agencies. They'll just say none of this exists. But it does exist. It's in the secret space programs. It's top classified information about these bases that I remember. So, how can we actually verify and corroborate this evidence that it exists? Because it does. I'm 100% sure of the accuracy of my memory event recall. 100%. I'm not lying. I remember what I remember. Nobody actually implanted these physical locations in my brain. I remember them because they're physical bases that are there in facilities. They're there. I can't unremember the fact that those things are there. I remember the 12 bunks. The other 11 team members were who I worked with. Don't remember the names, but I remember the bunks. All the way down to the toilets. I have those memories. And there's no privacy. It's basically unisex shared quarters. 12 bunks, a few lockers, 2 tables with 4 chairs per each table for the assigned work unit you work with for whatever project you're working on, whether that's a few months, a year, whatnot. That's the group you work with. That's the group you sleep with in the same room with, you eat with. That's your work group for the time of the project durations. That's what I remember on the Mars ICC basis. Working with 11 other people, being in a huge room with 12 bunks and a few lockers, very military-like. You wake up, you eat, you get your assignment for the day, you go and do your work. Then when the work hour is over with your work unit, you stop what you're doing, lock down the facility, you go and eat, and you go and sleep. And then there's some downtime, recreational time in between that you're allotted, depending on how well you did your work. And if it was completed satisfactory, and then you repeat it all over again. I remember that. I remember the sonic showers that Douglas MacDonald did for the ICC Mars bases. I remember the smart toilets. I remember all of it. I have the memories, and I've shared it publicly. So, my hypothetical question to you, and the only information I really care about is verifying the locations of those Mars ICC bases and the other facilities on the moon and Mars, the 2 Mars colonies. That's, to me, the very important evidence from all of my memory event recall, because they're actually mapped locations, coordinates, set of coordinates, and geographical, topographical areas that I remember looking familiar to me. That's my evidence that I really care about verifying. The rest of it, sure, I'd like to verify it, but, you know, it's part of history, so to speak. If anybody could requisition freedom of information on the sonic showers, because I did find on the internet that Douglas MacDonald did work in the 1970s on those prototypes. So if anybody can requisition information on those prototypes and how that was done, more than welcome to. I've actually put that information in the question that I answered. How is the interplanetary corporate conglomerate structured? So that company, Douglas MacDonald, is part of it in one of those projects. So if you guys do your due diligence and research and actually can get FOIA on that project, the sonic showers from 1970s, what they did with that, that would be fantastic. So just saying, I'm an experiencer and I'm also a researcher in my own right, in my own way. So maybe that's not considered your research the way you do it, but I have stuff. I have evidence that I consider evidence I'd like to get verified. So who do I reach out to send this stuff to? And I would like an answer back, actually, to what you guys discover about this, if you choose to explore the evidence and the research that I've done. I think it's valid and important, and it's part of disclosure history. So thank you very much, and namaste.